Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to Barn Besties. I am Stephanie. My barn bestie, Miss Megan, is on location right now in California when we are filming this. I am here in Megan's barn and interviewing her barn manager, Miss Ann. This is part 2. If you have missed part 1, please do circle back and watch part 1, learning all the things from Ann, how she kind of came into becoming a barn manager. And part 1 was really, really cool, learning all about, well, the first barn that you were kind of labeled stall cleaner, but you really started morphing into like barn management. Yep. So today, part 2, we're going to learn about the next barn where you were more officially maybe a barn manager.
Yep.
So that's where we're at. So this is Miss Ann. Say hi.
Hi.
Okay, so yeah, on that note, so you've wrapped things up at the first barn and moved on to another barn. Was it like an immediate thing? You went into like an immediate employment position there, or were you like boarding at a few facilities and later on, a few years later? Like talk me through that.
Boarding at another place with one of my vets.
Okay.
And then somebody said that this barn was hiring.
Oh.
So I went and interviewed and started the next day.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you had to move your horse at some point and all that.
My mare in foal, actually. She just had a baby previously, and so I had 2.
Okay, so what were they hiring for?
Stall cleaner.
Okay.
The normal take care of the horses, feeding, everything.
So basically
everything.
Almost barn management.
Arena, everything.
Really more like, I feel like sometimes barn manager, like everybody is afraid to use that term, that title, and they just are like, well, you're stall cleaner, but you have to do everything else.
You have to do it all.
So I think Megan does a pretty good job of separating out duties here. Yeah. But I digress. Let's go back to, so you come into this facility, like how like your first one, you guys, it was 90 stall barn, 50 to 100 horses in a rough board situation. So how big a facility was this next place?
It was a 12 stall barn.
Okay.
With 30 total on the property.
Oh, so much more manageable.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
For myself, because I was doing it all myself.
Oh, I was just going to ask if there was anybody else.
I had a person work for me on the weekends for a while. And
so you could have a day off?
Yeah, 2 days off or something.
Oh, that's nice.
And then she moved on to a new career, and then I had another girl work for me 1 day a week.
Typical. So, yeah, typical kind of the situation. And I think, as I mentioned in part 1, Megan and I are, kind of tackling this slowly. The problems that, the equestrian community overall is finding with rising costs and a shortage of labor.
Yep.
But I digress. So 30 horses, and you said 12 stalls.
Yep.
So horses, were they always turned out barring injury, but horses went in and out?
They always went out every day.
Okay, so
rain or shine.
Sure. Multiple pastures, like tons and tons of individual turnout, or
there's only a max of 5 horses per pasture.
Okay.
So some had 2 in it, some had 5, some had 6.
Sure.
Once in a while. But.
Sure. So hopefully more manageable and hopefully a little bit safer than like large herds.
Yep.
Large herds get tricky.
Oh yeah. Regard. A lot of fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're in a contained small area for sure.
Yeah.
So walk me through that facility. 12 stalls.
Horses were hand walked out.
Was it like, oh, nice. Safely let in and out. Yep. So how was the barn laid out? Was it like one long aisle? Was it
2
aisles? Okay. Yep. So stalls were cleaned by yourself. Did you, in the previous video, she mentioned that they had a tractor that they drove up and down the aisle with the manure spreader. How did you and the staff clean?
With the gator. John Deere gator.
So that's how I did I've done my barn for years, is we had a Polaris Ranger, and I either had, the kind of the handheld, the muck buckets that I would dump into the bed, or oftentimes,
we tossed it in.
I just tossed it clean directly in.
That's what we did too.
So yeah, understandable. So how was their watering situation?
In the stalls, buckets with a hose.
Buckets? Okay, with a hose, but it wasn't
hoses outside.
It wasn't hoses and water tanks.
Yep.
Year
16 water tanks to scrub and dump.
16. Wow. So How far was like the longest drag of the like? Were you?
It was 300 feet of hose.
Oh my!
Wasn't
In the
it?
winter too.
Yep.
Wow.
I know, right?
That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and you
Oh.
got to do it quickly, or your hoses freeze when it's really cold.
When we moved into my property, yes, we didn't, because we literally moved in. Honestly, got like fencing and shelters put up right before winter hit.
Yeah.
So there was existing hydrant in a small shed, and that was it for we just didn't have time to get anything put in before winter hit in Wisconsin. And once winter comes in and the frost goes in the ground, you generally try not to do anything with digging like water lines, at least for agricultural situations, right? So like I did that, and it was honestly, with two people, it was tough, challenging, and I don't think we had 300 feet. I think we probably had half that. Yeah, and it was a nightmare. So how did you handle that on your own? Like, you must have come up with a really good system. And
well, we had the wheel thing in our pump house.
Okay, was that heated?
Yeah, in the winter it was heated, so the hose was warm, so it rolled out nicely. So you just water quickly and then wheel it back on.
Okay, sure. I in the first barn I managed, we had 1 to 2 water tanks for the 2 pastures, obviously. I'm trying to remember if we just ended up shutting down the front pasture in the winter, but it was running hose, and it was several hundred feet. So yeah, that's no fun. So that's a con we don't recommend. And we didn't have like regular electrical outlets by the tanks. We had cords running everywhere. So that's shoveling snow, you put the bobcat, you got to watch out for cords everywhere. Wow. It was a pain. That honestly sounds not only just plain dangerous overall, but that sounds like an electrocution potential, a fire hazard, a code violation. But a lot of these farms are so old. Well, the fencing, they didn't have the fencer hooked up right. So some tanks would be electrified from the current. So I don't know how that was happening. So they'd have to move the fencer somewhere else, and then it worked. Oh, not a properly grounded fencer. Wow. So okay, so yeah, take that as a negative. Don't. We'll call that MacGyvering. Yeah, right. Anything with electricity and water needs to be done very safely. So, okay. So what were your duties then? You turn in, turn out, you were feeding. Were you arranging for your vet, or did the clients kind of do that on their own? I did that. Okay. That. And then was that just like routine vet appointments, like shots in the spring and the fall, and teeth and that kind of thing? And then were clients if they wanted something extra looked at, then they just called. They did it on their own. Yeah. Okay. So were you there and available to meet the vet, bring the horses in and out, kind of hold the vet for the farrier of the vet? Yep. Okay. Always. Okay. Sure. I mean, always there. As somebody who has a full-time job, for me, it's really hard for me to coordinate, being available for a vet and farrier appointment. It takes a lot of, so having a barn manager and staff available is huge. Right. And I'm going to say I'm very appreciative when that situation can be, arranged. So, anything else? You were doing like fence maintenance? Like things? Horses that would colic, I would be there for hours walking them till the vet come. So the owner would show up. Okay. Wow. One thing we didn't really discuss in the first video, and I don't know why, since we're sitting here with our heated vests on and it's January in Wisconsin, talk to me about like snow removal and winter, things like that. Did these places have somebody that like plowed and did like the big like snow removal, or was that part of your job? The owners would shovel most of it, but you just had cleanup in certain areas. Clean up, certain areas, the gateways and stuff like that. Yeah. Most of the time it would get done. Okay, so that wasn't part of your... No, that was not part of mine. Like the larger portion, I should say, of that wasn't. Yeah. Okay, well, that's helpful. As a barn owner, I had to do it all. So, you just, or was responsible for hiring somebody to do it all, but I generally was doing, Okay, so any other duties we haven't talked about at the second place? You were basically living there morning through past dusk. You know, if you had a sick horse, you're waiting for the vet, waiting for the owners. So what was the policy for, as far as colic, you know, you were there, let's say you weren't there, say it was, you know, when would you in theory leave at the end of the day and hopefully be done working?
After chores, feeding and stuff,
so
usually
6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
It was usually about 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Okay, so let's say you had gotten out of there 6 o'clock, you're home. You know, if a boarder was out there in the evenings riding and noticed a sick horse, were you the first person they called?
They will obviously they'll call their vet, but
well,
yeah,
I mean,
they
let's
would
just
call
say,
and let me know.
let's just say I'm boarder, you know, boarder Stephanie, and I own horse A, and I'm, you know, I come in from riding, and I'm like, oh, horse, you know, this horse 3 doors down doesn't look right.
Yep. Then I would go out.
So they call you and be like, hey, Ann, I don't know if horse ABC is looking real good.
Or
so
the owner up at the house.
Okay.
She would come down because she was a vet tech. So.
Oh, very nice. Okay. So you still had those kind of on-call duties. Yep. I mean, I think, you know, people need to understand and appreciate how much work and personal time this can take for sure. So let's loop around and talk about like pros and cons on that farm. Is there anything that you like loved about the farm, the way they laid out the property?
I mean,
infrastructure. Did you love the stalls? We talked about in video number 1 about how you really liked like that watering system they put in.
Yeah.
Was there anything on here you're like, boy, you know, I think this is great. I'm going to remember this and maybe consider doing it in another farm? Or was it just kind of like,
Yeah, it was just normal farm.
Sure. Yeah, nothing remarkable.
No.
Okay, which is fine. I mean, we all kind of tend to do it the same. What about you hated it? Things that you were like, I would never do this, and I would never want to see this done. Or,
all the hoses.
Okay, so
or the electrical everywhere.
Sure,
that's fixed now, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important for people to think about. One of the reasons, you know, Megan and I are doing this channel is, you know, obviously Megan built her facility with her dad and her mom. And I did the same thing on my property, and we only knew what we knew. And, you know, she did hers as she was a kid and growing up, and she's obviously added on so much to it as she's, you know, gone through her career as a trainer. And we've added things that we, you know, knew at the time, but there's stuff we're like, boy, I wish I would have known this like 5 years ago, you know, and I was doing this. So we're always, you know, looking to talk to people such as yourself, to hear not only the really cool things, and we've seen a ton of really cool stuff. We've got so much video coming out over the next 6 months, and we're going to be making more, but also the I don't recommends. I think the I don't recommends, or I never thought of this, I didn't even think of this, I wish I would have thought of it. Those are the things that we really want to like bring forth and let people know, because
salt in the arena is a big one.
Yeah, but I mean, getting back to the watering thing, putting in pastures without actually thinking about, I need to run water out there, and I need to figure out the situation with water in the winter, which probably means I need electricity out there. So these kinds of things, thinking in you know, about it and doing it right the first time is going to save you a lot of money. As an example, Anne, I mentioned I ran hydrants, right? When we had the plumber run the hydrants, I did not have him put shutoffs like those plumbers shutoffs close to the hydrants. So, you know, unfortunately, if we had an issue with the hydrant, and that they do go bad over the years, we had to like shut the water off at the well.
Oh, geez.
Which kind of shut everything else off. So, you know, when a hydrant would go bad and we'd have to have that replaced, we were like, please put in a shut off, because then what you could do, you could leave the well and the rest of the farm having water. You just shut that one hydrant off, and then it was taken care of. So these are the kinds of things that we're looking at. That is where I'm leading to all these questions. So obviously that's been a repetitive theme in what you've seen over the years, and I've seen it. I understand it as well. Okay, so going on to other things.
The salt in the arena was a big one.
Learning her. I remember
a lot of people,
30 years ago, we didn't know. It wasn't a thing. I don't think there was the products available like there are now. I actually just read online on social media, somebody, actually I think it was a video they might have posted on Facebook, or maybe it was Instagram, I'm not really sure, but they had a apparently this is really my situation, have an outdoor arena but not an indoor. And so like in the wintertime there, your footing freezes, everything freezes, right? So they had been told to put, and I kind of cringed because I'm not sure that I would recommend this, but they were told to, the water softener pellets, the salt pellets,
the big ones.
They threw those, were told to put those out in the arena. And honestly, per her video, it worked. Wow. I don't know if she was as far north as we are to get the extremes that we get here, but for her, it worked. So, I mean, I don't think 25 years ago we had anything other than water softener salt, but now we had. I feel like the first product was calcium chloride. Does that sound right? Yep. And now it's mag flakes. Yep. I think that's magnesium chloride or something similar. Mag flakes is what they're called. So that's amazing.
But where I was at, they would put salt in the arena, but they didn't have boards. So the metal all rusted. So it's rusting upward. So it leaves holes to the outside. So you have to have boards.
Yeah, so their arena didn't have kickboards or anything. Yep. That's definitely huge because most farms here, they're metal buildings. Yep. And unlike in the South, ours are enclosed metal buildings.
Right.
We don't really have what are called covered arenas. We have full-on indoor arenas. So yeah, that's a problem.
Yep.
That would be a costly error.
Yeah. They got a lot to replace.
Because then you're replacing the skin on your building.
Yep.
Now, that said, putting in kickboards is expensive.
Yep.
But there's varying ways to do it. These are 2x10s, I think, maybe 2x12s. Looks like 2x10s to me. Some people will use this, but I've seen a lot. Oh, sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. Like a plywood.
Oh, yeah.
And a treated plywood, but treated plywood isn't cheap either, but probably less expensive than like a 2x10. Yep. So, I'm sure there's other options. I think when I was boarding, I've seen people who have used, and now they didn't have the arena maybe all the way to the edge of the building. They might have like left an area along the side to store things, but they'll use corral panels.
Yep.
But that's metal. Same scenario, same problem.
Yep.
Eventually going to rust. Excuse me. Okay, anything else? Pros, cons.
Keeping the fencing tight.
Yes.
Proper spacing of the T-post.
Oh, yes. That's a great one to quick talk about. Fencing I put in, they actually had recommendations on how far you could technically go that they would recommend.
Yep.
But what was your experience on that?
Well,
too far apart?
Theirs was too far apart. That was like 10 or 12 feet apart, which you need 8 feet apart.
Okay, for the type of fencing?
Yeah, because we had electric braid.
Oh, okay, sure.
And that stretches really easily.
Sure, yeah, it does. So, yeah, that's probably somebody either not reading the recommendations or cost savings.
Yep.
So, but yeah, once you fall outside the recommendation of, sorry guys, what the manufacturer recommends, you run into all these problems.
Yep.
So how often were you having to do that?
Not too often, but like when the winter, when you get that heavy ice, it would stretch and bow the fencing down.
Okay.
So yeah, you really had to keep
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Honestly, we do get a lot of freezing rain and melting snow. Okay. Yep. So we can wrap this part 2 up. We might as well kind of go from barn to barn, and we'll come back for part 3, guys. Sorry for the coughing. I clearly have a tickle in my throat, but before we go, please do hit that subscribe button. Make sure you come back for part 3. So by clicking and shading in the bell, you will be notified when we drop our next video. And any questions you have, please do leave them below in the comments. But thank you, Anne. We're going to come back for part 3. We'll see you guys on the next video. Bye, everybody.